Lawmakers are drawing attention to the threat of smart home products sold by a Chinese company. This as Secretary of War Pete Hegseth names China in his priorities for the military. Joining me to discuss is Yurichiro Kakutani, Policy Advisor at the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center. Yוצ'iro Kakutani, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, 23 lawmakers from both chambers and both parties in Congress are now pushing the Trump administration to ban smart home products sold by a CCP-tied company called TP-Link. They sell Wi-Fi routers, smart cameras, baby monitors, and lawmakers are saying that the CCP can access these videos to track, blackmail, or even extort U.S. citizens. Now, the Japanese Prime Minister says that they found malicious firmware in 16,000 TP-Link devices. How concerned should Americans be about this?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of room for concern. These sort of Internet of Things products, they're ubiquitous in a lot of the electronics that we use. And unfortunately, sometimes we trust them and when we shouldn't. And I think these sort of equipment are in our homes, in our private spaces. And unfortunately, we don't know what kind of backdoors China has in some of these products to listen in. So I think the lawmakers' concerns are warranted. And if necessary, certain U.S. government restrictions or bans on these sort of products to protect the privacy and security of Americans may be necessary.
And it's not just Congress. Google is suing cyber criminals in China for an alleged credit card and identity theft scam targeting millions of Americans. They say that the hackers sent text messages to people that took them to fake websites, asking them for their credit card information. Now, Chinese cyber hackers are becoming an increasing concern here. Is the U.S. doing enough to counter this front of the CCP's unrestricted warfare?
Obviously, I think this is a continuous concern in terms of these sort of Chinese cyber criminals. There's so many foreign cyber criminals that take advantage of a lot of Americans, especially our elderly population, who might not have the training necessary to identify these sort of spearing attempts. A lot of these sort of things, of course, when you talk to the Chinese, they'll say, well, we can't really control them. They just are cyber criminals, and they kind of have their own mind of their own. But of course, I think the U.S. response should be to make this clear that this is unacceptable to the Chinese, because obviously China has the mechanisms and enforcement mechanism necessary to crack down on people when they want to. So the fact that they're not taking these sort of actions seriously suggests that this is something that the United States needs to raise, because obviously the Chinese could crack down on this. America just needs to make sure that they do by making it clear that this is not something that we can tolerate any further.
I want to get now to the Secretary of War. The Secretary, Pete Hegseth, just released 10 principles of the golden age of America's warfighting. 9 are about building up the military, and then there's one which is about deterring China. It's the only enemy mentioned. Why is Hegseth singling out the CCP here, you think?
I think obviously because that's the pacing threat, right? This is they've been very clear messaging for this administration, especially the Department of War, that China and the PRC, People's Republic of China, is the pacing threat. It is the primary, threat that the United States needs to take most seriously, and that's been reflected in terms of a lot of his force posture review and whatnot. And I think it's a continued example of how this administration is taking the military threat posed by the PRC seriously and with the gravity that it really deserves, finally, after decades of both sides of the aisle not paying sufficient amount of attention to the military threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party.
Mm-hmm. And a Chinese state-run media outlet now says that Japan's new prime minister will have to, quote, pay a price for saying that Japan would defend Taiwan if attacked by the CCP. Now, last weekend, a CCP official said that the Japanese prime minister should be beheaded for saying this. What does this say about the nature of the CCP?
I think it says that the CCP does not tolerate dissent, right? Whether it be that's domestically or internationally, increasingly internationally, right? This is just textbook political warfare, where if they sense that Japan or South Korea or Taiwan or even the United States is adopting a political posture that's not conducive to the CCP, they do not hesitate to go straight to violent intimidation to shut up that dissent and political manipulation and interference. And I think this demonstrates that the CCP does not tolerate dissent, and they are happy to make violent threat and intimidations to interfere in the democracies of the United States as well as our allies and partners. And it's difficult to it's difficult to have a live and let be with a country like like the PRC, which insists that everyone needs to follow their line, or they're going to make these sort of violent threats.
Yוצ'iro Kakutani, thank you so much for your insights here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack.